So to start with, we're going to put you in, you know, the LS head, which is kind of the most comparable one to what you're playing.
Yeah.
Do you find this one spins a little bit lower than last year's one? So we're definitely going to want to play a little bit more loft. So I've put this about a full degree higher.
Okay.
So where you were playing that one was on 9 degree, which is obviously quite low.
Right, okay.
So 9 degree with an open face.
Yeah.
So you're really having to kind of hit up on that and really almost try and draw swing it to kind of get that face square impact. Gosh. So this should be a little bit easier because there's a bit more loft on it and it's a little bit squarer to start with.
So that's the same sort of miss, I think. I definitely felt a bit over, so it'd be interesting to see.
I mean, the start line was a little bit straighter than the ones we hit previously, but like I say, I by no means think this is going to be the setting that you end off on.
Okay.
It's just the most comparable one to what you're playing now, but I think we're going to find something in one of the other heads here. So that would be a fairly comparable with these two shots you hit here, right? So
slightly not as destructive.
Yeah, and you can see that
still creeping on the fairway.
So this launch direction that I look at a lot. So, you know, I always want it starting, you know, based on your shape where you tend to hit it. But the launch direction is much, much closer to 0 than it was with these two.
Okay.
Distance-wise, you know, height-wise, spin fairly similar. But I think just with that face being that little bit squarer for you, you haven't had to fight so hard to kind of get it starting left.
That's true. Okay.
So that's, you know, one positive. But like I say, I still think that second one there was much, much better in that it launched 14. I think we found, you know, your best drives so far have been about between 14 and 15 launch, so that's what I would be looking for. But I'm going to just pop the loft up a little bit more there. But I do think we're going to end off in one of the other heads, to be honest. Looking at that dispersion circle with your one, we've hit 5 drives there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's what we really want to, you know, we really obviously want them all kind of, we want to bring it in not only left to right, but also front to back. Because like you mentioned to me, if you hit this one, you can't rely on carrying a corner or carrying a bunker. Whereas if they're all at least, you know, the mishits are sort of still carrying here, at least you know, okay, my bad hit
but it
carries
might be
190 or whatever. Whatever it may be.
Yeah, so I'm still sort of sending it out there, aren't I?
Yeah.
But that's my over the shot. Oh, a bit thuddy, but it's a left miss rather than a right.
Reacting to what you've seen again the past couple of shots, which is very normal, and that's what we do. You know, you even with the best players in the world that I work with, you know, you'll see them miss one right, and then, you know, more often than not, the next one will be left because they're reacting to what they've seen.
Funny, isn't it? Just psychologically.
So this driver, in the LS driver, if we look at, you know, the other models, which I'll show you now. So if you look at where the weight is positioned on these two, so if you look at, you've got this big heavy weight here, sliding weight, which we can move backwards and forwards a little bit, but you can see to start with the weight here, the weight port is a lot more in the heel to start with, and then even more so on this one.
Okay.
So by that token, this is going to be the most kind of fade bias. This is going to be a little more neutral, and this one is going to be the most draw bias. So the fact you're starting it right and struggling a little bit with a fade shot would suggest to me this is probably the least likely head we're going to end up in.
Okay, that makes sense.
So we're going to end up in one of these heads for sure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
But as a comparison, I think just squaring the face a little bit more on your head starts the ball a little bit straighter, which is a good thing. But I think we need to make that, you know, even more so, a little bit easier for you to do.
That'd be ideal.
So this is in the Qi10, the kind of standard head, the core head, as we would call it. So I've given you a 9 loft head here.
Okay.
But I'm actually playing it on about 10 loft.
That was better.
Mm-hmm. So nice high launch, nice little draw. That's exactly what we're looking for, really, isn't it?
Oh, I might have forced it there.
Well, to be honest, that should be easier to achieve. Like I'm almost expecting you not to have to try and draw it, and it draw a little easier with this one. Good.
Yeah,
so already
really
we're seeing, you know, 3 out of the 4 shots you've hit a draw with there, which I don't think you could say that with either of the other 2 heads.
I haven't seen a draw in a while.
Again, that's sort of your bad shot, but it's not.
It's not as
I don't think it's as bad as the others.
That's more of just like a push right rather than like a.
It wasn't cutting or importantly losing distance.
Yeah.
So you look at that one there, it's carried the same distance as the others.
God,
and
my
it's
cat, I
finished.
need to get on the old, need to get on the weights. I carry his weight down.
I don't know what it is about in here, but everyone who comes in, I don't know if it's because I fit in the winter most of the time, but everyone comes in and say, I hit it further than this. Like,
I swear.
so you can see here, let's say with your best shot here with your driver, and your best shots here, here and here with the others, they're all ending in pretty much the same spot because, you know, your best swings and your best contacts and your best drive are, you know, always going to be much of a muchness. But what we're really hoping to see out of this year's driver with you is that consistency. Absolutely. And I think, you know, straight away with those two circles, that's sort of what we're seeing. But I still think we've got a bit more improvement to find. But look at these, let's say, I mean, even with your one, so your best one here to your slightly kind of miss to the right. Let's look at that. You know, you lose 8 or 10 yards there in carry. Whereas these ones, I mean, they're all carrying pretty much the same, aren't they? Whether you've hit them kind of straight, little draw, or just blocked out to the right. So the consistency across where you're hitting them on the face, the consistency of the height is helping you. And like I said to you at first, we don't only want to see the consistency come in left and right, but I also want to see it front and back as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Before we move on, this is definitely the best so far in terms of consistency. I think we can lower the spin and try and help that even further. But let's just try this in the max head because I really want to see this one because I think this should be for you the easiest one of all to hit.
Okay.
It's also going to be the highest spin, so it does have a more backward centre of gravity, which is going to make it more consistent, more stable, but it's also going to help add a little bit of spin. So we're definitely going to drop that loft down a little bit.
Okay.
Nice. So that's that one that started to the right.
Yeah,
but it's actually trying to work back, isn't it? Yeah. That's more like I'd expect to see with this head. I don't know if you notice as well, but it kind of sits a little more to the left, so it's kind of a little bit squarer to start with. If you think, like say where you were on your one, it was probably sitting about here.
Starting with an open face.
Yeah. So where we are now, it's sitting much squarer to begin with.
Okay.
And then obviously the way that the bigger is generally more forgiving.
Yes.
So that's
bigger is better, as they say.
Bigger is certainly more consistent and more stable. Yeah. A little better.
Yeah, a bit
I think
sort of T-y, as in like
we
cut
may
the ground.
struggle to get the height on this one down at 9. So I don't think you were fighting that as much with the other head. So give me one more here.
There she goes.
Yeah.
That's the right.
I mean, that's the one good thing about this one. The two you have sort of blocked out to the right have been trying to kind of come back.
They've not been like, see you later.
No,
completely
but
gone. Yeah.
in terms of consistency of start line, you just haven't kind of quite had it with this one. Whether that's visually, whether you know that's you, like I say, responding to what you're seeing in the head and it being quite different to what you're used to, and you definitely didn't struggle with that with the other head. So let's go back to this head. I think this one had a lot of potential. We just need to try and kind of lower that spin, like I said, ideally. Okay, so we're back onto the blue head, the Qi10 standard. So if you look where we are, standard, the spin rate you're getting on this head on average is 2,800. The launch is 14.7. So ideally we want to maintain that kind of 14 to 15 launch angle, but we want to reduce this spin here, this 2,800, because we know from looking at your best drive of the day, that spin was that would be more what we're looking for there, 2,500.
Right, okay.
So if we can get the spin closer to that, but keep that launch angle up, we should have the best of both. Well, the good thing about this is it's not launching lower, is it? We're definitely maintaining a high launch angle.
Oh, still a bit out to the right there.
There you go.
Oh, there it is.
I mean, that's down the right.
Yeah.
So, but that would probably still be a fairway hit. And I still think that was, you know, it was right, but not moving right. So you're not losing distance. You know what you talked about, that shape at the start.
Exactly, that's
feel
the
like
killer.
You're killing distance. Well, all these ones are, look again at that launch angle. When I'm fitting a driver, you want nice consistent numbers. So like I say, the ball speed consistent, because that's suggesting that it's delivering consistently. And you remember that launch angle, if you look at the launch angle on all the leads, 14, 15, 15, 13, 15, 14, 13, 14, 15. Every single one is within 2 degrees. So that's consistent. For me, the goal of today's session was to find you a more consistent driver.
Yes.
One that, you know, the first thing you said to me was, I'm missing it to the right now. Whereas last time I saw you were missing it to the left. You know, I've tweaked about with the driver a little bit and that wasn't helping you. But I think, you know, going through the 3 heads, we found for sure the first head, a little more fade bias, the bigger head, you know, not quite the consistency at start line. And that would match up with the dispersion circles, I think, here. Looking at that, you know, the orange one obviously looks good, but they were all consistently fading to the right. The blue one now is much, much more what we're looking for. You know, we've got none of these short ones dropping below the 180 mark.
Okay.
And we haven't got any of the short ones sort of to the right. Well, one maybe there out of about 8 or 9 drives. So for me, this setup
feels like it could be the winner.
It gives you a tighter dispersion circle as well, so it's giving you more consistency there.
I think that's the key. Is obviously it's funny because you look at these and you think, oh God, like carry wise, I thought I was bigger than that, but that's okay for now. Really, what I want to get to is accuracy with dispersion, like you say, and being able to, whatever the distance is that I'm carrying, trust that it's more reliable and only going to maybe, you know, grow rather than, like I said, that. What I noticed a lot, for example, on the 3rd hole at West Surrey, there's a front bunker, which previously I would have like taken that on off the red tees, no worries. And then as time has like gone on and this more cutty one comes in, you're thinking, oh my God, like I'm literally, it's starting out that way, but it's coming back into that front bunker. Yeah. And then again, that's kind of a thing where you're thinking, I don't really want to be taking on trouble if I can't guarantee that I'm going to carry it. And so even just knowing more what my carry is, and playing to that, but also actually it being more that dispersion of where do the shots, like if I miss them, do they somewhat retain their carry, but maybe they're just way off to the right, rather than that shapy one. I just, it could be 20 yards shorter than what I was used to, so you can't plan for it or like play
Look
to
at
it.
This one, so like I say, you hit one really, really lovely drive with your driver there. But if you look at how far that's carried versus your shortest one, you know, you've got 25 yards between your best hit and your missed hit there.
So you just can't really factor.
Let's look at the best hit and the worst hit with this head in your hand now. You got 14 yards.
Yeah.
So you've gone from 25 yards to 14 yards front to back.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even that like 14-yard one, I think I probably hit the ground. You know, it's like a groundy mistake type shot rather than.
And knowing that you're not hitting those sort of short, cutty ones to the right. Yeah. I think you're only going to, with time, just trust it more and more and more.
Exactly.
And not try and hit the drawy one that you hold on to.
Not try and fix it.
And not hit, you know, with that open face setup that I said you had and a little bit more upright. You're not going to hit the Healy one so much. You're going to find you're going to make more and more better contact. So I think you'll only swing with more and more freedom. Yeah, once you trust it.
And I think as well, like as I come out of these sort of, well, I mean, I think I'll be making tweaks all the time, but you know, the winter for me has really been like a run of trying to make these changes. And I think just by habit, I was okay with driver to an extent, but then it would be more that I like chose to focus on irons, and so I just haven't even really like practiced that much with driver and the longer clubs in the bag, because I've been trying to just, you know, get the iron.
2 different swings, you know, for your best iron strike.
But no, this definitely
downward hit, and the driver being very much an upward hit. You know, but if you look at, like I said, let's, you know, look at the clues with your 2 best drives of the day there. You know, they've both launched high and they've both spun pretty low. So that's, you know, when you're practicing in your own time, that's, you know, the sort of figures you should have in mind for what you're aiming for. But I think you'll achieve that more and more once you trust it and you stop seeing it, you know, Healy weak shots to the right, and then you're sort of trying to flip it to fight it and find the fairway again.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas I think you're doing that much easier with this one. So, you know, if you look at your fairway lines here, you know, you're finding the fairway much more consistently and consistently further up it as well.
Brilliant.
With the head you have here. But
perfect.
Keeping that launch, you know, up ideally around 14.5, 15, I think, has produced your best drives with that spin around that 2,500 or just below mark. That's the numbers I think you should be kind of aiming for.
Yeah, brilliant.
For your best drive. But I think, like I say, with this setup, you know, going through all the heads and what we know about what you came from with the head setup versus what we've ended up in here, it's quite a different setup. You know, your one a 10.5 face set open, Yeah, you know, down to about 9 loft. This one's on about 10. Yeah, 10 loft with actually a much more squarer club face.
Right, yeah, perfect.
Slightly more forgiving head setup, and obviously that weight being that little bit in the heel there to start with. You know, it's just naturally helping you to kind of start it online and help you draw it a little bit as well.
Brilliant.
So I think that's a pretty good package.